These right here are healthy vegan, no chicken pot pies, made with no oil, no wheat, no refined sugar, and no rice. If you love savory comfort foods, you'll love these. And today, I'm going to show you how to make your own. All right, so let's talk about what we're going to use and make this delicious vegan no chicken pot pie. Now to replace the chicken, I'm going to use lion's mane mushroom. I love these mushrooms. They're super healthy, but not only that, they're very kind of dense, so they're excellent for replacing things like chicken. So these are perfect. You'll see me using these a lot. I'm going to use some carrots. I'm going to use some sweet potatoes. Now you could use red potatoes, yellow potatoes, russet potatoes, whatever you prefer. As you know by now, I love my sweet potatoes. More fiber, more nutrients, and the flavor is unbeatable in my opinion, so I'm going with those. Now, typically I would use something like cashews to create this sauce, but since we're already using almonds in our pie crust and in our topping, I thought that I would skip the nuts for this part and use cannellini beans, navy beans, and I'm gonna mix that with some hemp seeds. Now, along with that, to create the sauce, we're going to add some nutritional yeast, some black pepper and smoked paprika, a little mustard powder, some onion powder, a few cloves of garlic, and some green peas. So if you look at these ingredients, you can see that this is going to be a super healthy dish, but I'm telling you guys, I've made this several times, and the sauce is the boss when it comes to this recipe. It's really good. You're going to love it. Let's start putting it together. Okay, so for now, I've set my other ingredients aside. And what I'm going to do first is make the crust for this pot pie. Let me tell you what I'm going to use. I'm going to use some almond flour. I'm going to use some ground flax mixed with water to make a flax egg. And I'm going to use some arrowroot powder. Now, for my nut-free followers out there, I have a pie crust that is nut-free made out of oat flour. If you'd rather use that to keep this nut-free, you can tap right here and you can see that recipe for my nut-free pie crust. Okay, so let's start putting our pie crust together here. Okay, so the first thing I need to do to prepare this crust is make a flax egg. Now to do that, I'm mixing ground flax and water, and then I'll set it aside to let it thicken. Next, it's just a matter of combining my dry ingredients, adding the flax egg, and mixing my ingredients to bring them all together into a ball of dough. Now here I'm going to use 2 pieces of parchment paper to roll my crust into a circle large enough to fit my pans. Then I'm going to press my rolled crust into the pan. Now listen, don't worry if your dough cracks during this process, because you can simply use your fingers to press and fix the cracks afterwards. Lastly, I'm going to trim any excess dough from the sides of my pan, and then I'm ready for my next step. Okay, so now I've got my crust in both of my pans here, and I'm gonna put them in the freezer for about 10 to 15 minutes, and I'm gonna take them out and give them a quick bake before I add my filling. Now I'm using 2 6-inch pans here. You could use one bigger pan if you want. It's really up to you. I like to do it this way. So let's get them in the freezer now and get started on our filling. Okay, so the next thing I'm gonna do is go ahead and get my vegetables steamed, my sweet potatoes and my carrots. Now, I mentioned earlier that any type of potatoes will work for this recipe, and really any combination of vegetables will work too. Okay, so now I've got my crust in the freezer. I've got my veggies steaming. While that's happening, the next step is to make the sauce. Now, the sauce is what really makes this pot pie, so we're going to put it together now. Then we'll get our mushrooms cooked and put it all together. Now, if you've been watching my recipes, and you've heard me say before that beans are super healthy and I like to include them in my diet daily. Now here I'm using some navy beans. Navy beans are high in the amino acid leucine, which can be more difficult to get on a plant-based diet, so they're a great addition to this recipe. All right, so I've had my pie crust in the freezer for about 15 minutes. Now I want to get ready to put them in the oven and give them a quick bake. I'm just going to poke some holes here in the bottom of the crust before I get it in the oven here. So poking holes in the bottom of the crust will allow any steam to escape as they cook, and it'll also help the crust stay flat. Now I'm using some parchment paper and some glass bowls as my pie weights. Now you could use dried beans in the bowls to give it extra weight, or actual pie weights if you have some on hand. Okay, so the last thing we want to do before we put everything together is cook and season our mushrooms. Now I'm going to add a little water to the pan. Now mushrooms have a lot of water and they exude water on their own, but I'm just adding a little bit of water ahead of time to keep them from sticking until they start to exude their own water. Now, since mushrooms exude so much water and they shrink substantially, I'm breaking my pieces pretty big so that they don't shrink and get too small and get lost in the filling when I add them to the pie. Now I'm cooking the mushrooms until all the water has released and mostly evaporated. Then I'm going to add my spices and cook them for just 1 minute longer to release all the flavor. If you're enjoying this video, please like and subscribe below. All right, so now I've got everything prepared. I'm gonna get my filling in the bowl, mix it up really well. Then we're gonna get it in our pie crust, and it's just a matter of baking and waiting. Notice all of the healthy ingredients that I'm using to make this pot pie. Sweet potatoes, carrots, green peas, beans, mushrooms. Now I want you to look at the ingredient list on a store-bought pot pie. Now this is from a brand that is known for supposedly having healthy ingredients, yet there are lots of unhealthy ingredients in this list. That's why my opinion is that it's better to leave the store-bought alone and make your own. All right, so everything is coming together. We only have one more step before we get these in the oven, and that's to add some of these delicious, healthy vegan almond crumbs that I made. Now, again, in the spirit of my nut-free followers who want to keep this nut-free, I make some chickpea crumbs to replace nut crumbs. If you want to see the recipe to those, you can tap here. You can make those chickpea crumbs, and then this whole recipe is nut-free. All right, let's get them topped. Now I'm topping these pot pies with almond breadcrumbs, but you could use another piece of the pie crust over top if you prefer. Now I'll include the link to the recipe for these breadcrumbs in the description below the video. All right guys, everything is put together and these are ready for the oven. I can't wait to get them in, get them out, get them cooled, and get to them. All right, so I've had them out of the oven and cooling now for about 30 minutes or so, and they look great. I'm just about ready to give them a taste. First, I want to add one more touch, which is a little parsley. So I'm sprinkling some parsley over top, but you could use some chopped chives or just leave them as is. That is so good. I've had them before, so it's no surprise. If you like pot pies, you'll want to try these for sure. So if you're new to my channel and you're wondering how to find the recipe, look below the video for the word more. Tap on the word more and you'll see the beginning of the recipe. Tap on the word more a second time and you'll see the full recipe, and then you can begin to make your own. Thanks for watching.